Hi, I'm Tom and welcome to the Welsh Woodman Workshop. In tonight's video I'm going to show you how I made this mitre station to help me maximise the use of my mitre saw. So I hope you enjoy. Why did I want to build a mitre station? Having done the previous project where I was building the memorial bench, I found that some of my cuts weren't exactly supported, especially with the long lengths of timber. So I wanted to increase the support of my cuts. Secondly, I wanted to be able to accurately and easily make repetitive cuts. And this is what this mitre station is going to help me to do. So before we get into the make, I wanted to show you some of the features of the mitre station. So I've got a hold down clamp there, I've got a repeatable stop block, and I've got some little cubby hole areas underneath where we can keep sort of spare saw blades if needed. And I've got a pillar drill to this side. We've got a little cutout to allow the pillar drill to come right forward so we can still use that on the same bench. Just using a tape measure to measure the height and the width based around my existing bench there. I'm going to be using a bit of chipboard with a melamine sort of veneer over the top, which I managed to pick up for free, just striking on a chalk line and running that through the table saw. So I've got to cut to the right width, so I need to cut it to the right length. So I'm going to use the tape measure again to measure the right length. Tri-square to mark a nice 90-degree line across to make sure it's a straight line against my saw. And little squiggle to indicate the waist side of the line so I know which way to cut on. And just doing another measurement to make sure I got it nice and accurate. Now this Bosch saw is such a smooth cutter, and you can see with the articulator in the arm at the back is far smoother than rail saws I've used in the past. I did forget to turn on the dust extraction, so I've got a bit of cleaning up to do. So I'll show you the difference with the extraction on in the next cut. And you can see it's a little bit better, but still quite a messy dust this. We'll work on that in the future. Just taking some measurements of some battens I'm going to be drilling onto the bottom of the chipboard to bring it up to the same height as the saw itself. Push stick to keep my hands out of the way. And I'm going to be cross-cutting these to length then to essentially create like a torsion box, which should help keep everything nice and rigid and straight in the future. So I've just drilled holes all the way through, countersinking those holes now, and we're going to do a good old glue and screw job to attach these to the chipboard themselves. So I've got this little tiny bump out there, so I've just marked that up on the side, and we're going to use the router just to cut a little bit of this material away so it'll mate completely flush up against the fence. Right, I've got the ever so slight tiny bit of a micro ridge there, so I'm going to be using some playing cards. Thank you, Stu, brought these back from Las Vegas for me, to shim these up slightly. So just 2 playing cards underneath and on the back there, ever so slight lean, and taking away that tiny raise. So that's a really good tip. They're fantastic because they're so thin. They work really good as shims. I just tend to cut them up and use them when I need them. So I'm going to do exactly the same sort of principle on the other side. So gluing it and screwing these 2 side battens on. Use an impact driver. I find this really useful for driving in screws. And when it's all put together, I'll do the same routed groove on the other side to get it fit and flush to the work surface. Now the pillar drill is a little bit too far back, so I'm going to cut in a curve to allow me to put that forward. And I've got a cardboard template, found the centre. I can draw around that, flip it over, and draw around the other side, and that will give me a nice symmetrical curve I can cut out next with the jigsaw. So again, by cutting this curve should help bring the pillar drill nice and forward to the front of the bench. Right, the only thing left to do before we screw all these down is to trim off this corner, and that'll allow then the saw to reach its maximum sort of capacity when it's doing angled cuts. So in hindsight, I've probably done this before putting all the battens on, but I sort of made may do with it like this, and you can see full and free movement now of the saw. Going to mark on some holes, which I'm going to be drilling all the way through, and then I can run some screws up from the other side into the pine battens. So by drilling holes all the way through, I've countersunk them the other side, and I'll be able to screw up then into the existing blocks. So the next thing we're going to do is add a fence. Now I managed to get hold of this extruded aluminium, and it's really cool because it's got like a T-track slot in the centre of it. Now actually someone's going to throw this out, and before they did, I managed to ask them if they wouldn't mind me having it before it went into the skip. So we're going to be using this to make a fence and repeatable stop blocks, which will make cutting multiple parts a lot quicker, more accurate and easier. So I'm going to be using the powered hacksaw to do this. You could quite easily do this by hand, by cutting it with a hacksaw and putting it in the vise, but with my wonky cuts I thought this would be a better option. So I'm going to be drilling all the way through then with the pillar drill, and this is going to allow me to put some screw holes through. So in order to make sure this is super in line with the fence, I've clamped a piece of extruded aluminium that's dead flat and straight, not warped at all, to the existing fence. Then I've clamped my side fence to this, so everything should be nice and parallel in line with the existing fences. So we're going to screw these in now. I've done some pilot holes and just screwing them in so they're nice and tight. And you can see dead flat, dead straight, which I'm really happy with. So next step, I'm going to make some little stop blocks. So I'm going to need to trim up some pieces to the right width. So I've planed one of the sides already, so it's or jointed if you're from America. So I've put it against the fence so it's nice and accurate. So here's my test piece. So I've done a longer piece now, and what I'm going to do just to make it smoothly slide through is I'm going to plane the top, so run it through or a jointer. I've taken the guard off so you can see the process, and I've also used thickness planer to get it to the consistent thickness. So I've cut these little blocks to length. You can see that slide quite nicely. I'm going to do a bit of recycling on my old saw that the motor burnt out on, and I'm going to use the hacksaw again to cut off these the old fence essentially, and I'm going to try and make some little hold down clamps from this. So using an awl to mark out where I want to put my my drill holes to screw this into place, and I'm drilling some larger holes so I can feed through some M10 carriage bolts. I've just added a bit of acrylic paint to blend it in with a chipboard. So I've got the hold down clamps, and I've also made a quick stop block. Now I've got lots of additional stop blocks and things I can make jigs out of at a future date, but the wing nuts on these make it really, really useful for tightening this up quickly. So I can just tighten down that wing nut, and I've got an extremely strong clamp there. What I have done is I've chamfered the corner of this, so if I do get a build up of sawdust on this surface, it will go underneath there and it won't affect the accuracy of the cut. So it's brilliant the fact I can move this to any position along this length I want. When I don't want to use it, take it off, flip it round, and I can just put it on the back like that, and it can be just locked in place wherever I need it. So the stop blocks then, this is brilliant as this can act as a clamp, so I can make repeatable cuts again if I wanted to, or if I needed to step 2 cuts I could use that and then this in sort of tandem together. Also got another hold down at this end where it's probably boards are most vulnerable to slip up, and I think in the future I'll have a little roller I'll attach to this desk so I can roll the boards in straight away, straight onto the miter saw itself. So the area I'm going to be using my pillar drill in, I've designed so I've got this little slot. I can just untighten these slightly, move it across, move that block out, which is going to stop a lot of the sawdust going into there, and it will allow me to adjust the block for shorter measurements if needed. The pillar drill itself, I can adjust the table, I can use it far back if I want to, or if I want to bring it forward, it comes right towards the front of the bench, which is going to give me a lot of sort of accuracy, and especially with the smaller drill parts I want. And it's nice in the fact that I could still potentially have this in place and still run average size 2x4s along the mitre station itself. It's a test, so I've got a mark where I want to cut a repeated cut. So I move my stop block up, clamp the stop block down, So I hope you've enjoyed tonight's video and taken something positive from it. If you have, please let me know in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, if you hit the subscribe button there, that'll allow you to see more content like this in the future. So I hope you have a great night. Diolch yn fawr. Nos da.